Welcome to Dan and Dave's Garage, and today we're going to be answering the question of does it even make sense to have a project car? If you're a young guy looking to get started on something like this, should you even buy one? What are the questions that you should be asking yourself? And does it ever make sense to get one? In short, the answer is no. Don't get one. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and there's better things to do out there. But if that wasn't enough for you, I have a couple other tips that maybe you want to apply to yourself, some questions to ask for yourself, questions to try and figure out what you're actually doing and what the plan is with this. Because if you go in without a plan, you're going to end up with a bunch of other people on Marketplace selling your project car for pennies on a dollar and losing a ton of money and wasting a ton of time. So that's what you don't want to do. So let's get started. All right, let's get the first three big things out of the way, and that's money, time, and space. Everything costs money. Your project car costs money, the insurance, the registration, taxes, titling. That's just scratching the surface. Next, you got the parts to fix everything, right? If you're buying a project car, there's obviously things wrong. Parts are expensive, and the parts quality, I've noticed, is really hit or miss. Just putting this car together, I'm finding stuff just doesn't fit, and I'm having to custom 3D print little adapters and all this stuff to try and make things work. The other issue is just the tools. Now you can rent tools from like AutoZone for maybe some like specific one-off things, but really you're going to want to have your own tool set. You're going to want to have everything on hand, because that kind of goes to the next thing, which is time. If you have to keep going to the auto parts store to rent tools or keep going out to just, find more stuff, it just wastes so much time driving. You can't have a daily driver project and expect yourself to be able to piece together a car in the weekend. Just take your time estimate and multiply it 10x. And that's probably what it's going to actually take. I've been collecting parts for this car, for this current project. Subscribe to see Safari build on this 280Z. I've been collecting parts for like 3 weeks before I actually started working on it. And I am still waiting for parts, because parts I have ordered before, now that I pulled them out of the box, don't actually fit. They're wrong. So now I'm waiting, and which is partly why this video is being made. It adds a whole another layer of frustration. And the other thing is space, right? Once you have the car, you have the tools, you need to put that somewhere. Really, the best place is have your own garage, like this. This is the best place to do it. And if you're in an apartment, you're in a parent's place, and they don't let you do this, or you have an HOA or it doesn't let you have cars on jack stands, not the best idea. And maybe those policies are being put in place to save you from financial ruin. Next, let's talk about, if you do actually decide to buy a project car, what are some benefits that you see from it and what I've actually personally seen. Now, there are some benefits to project cars which you can't really deny, which is showing that this is proof that you can learn, right? High school isn't really that tough, so just having a high school diploma is just nothing, really. But by having a project car, by having something that works, by being able to show that you can put stuff together and follow directions and have the mental capacity to follow through with a promise to yourself to get something done, it is huge. I've actually used my project cars and talked about them for job interviews. And obviously, if you say in a job interview, the question comes up of, hey, what do you like to do for fun, right? Well, guess what? If you just say video games, it's you and everyone else. But if you say, hey, I like to restore vintage Japanese cars and motorcycles, and by the way, I have some pictures of them, and you talk about them, the eyes will light up. Everyone will know that you're the real deal and that you're doing something special, right? So that is a huge thing. It also teaches you, when you get into some of these older cars, it teaches you proper diagnosis. How do you actually solve problems? It's a whole problem solving game. And the actual diagnostic process for being for working on cars is a huge deal. You know, anyone can just unbolt things, right? Just nuts and bolts and just replace parts. But it takes a little bit more brain power to actually figure out and go through step by step the process and have a logical sequence to problem solving, right? So, for example, I've actually put this together, right? Again, in job interviews, talking about it with going through step by step, diagnosing the fuel injection issues on the 280Z when it didn't work, right? Because my job is, by trade, I'm a software engineer. So you go through the diagnostic procedure, right? It's very similar to like working with this piece of code, right? You have your issue that a customer or client is facing, or some issue that's popped up. Okay, let's work backwards from that, right? And so now you can see like, oh, what systems are involved? What touches what? How are things connected? You get to learn and put together this like little mental map of all these processes, and you get this huge understanding. And then you can apply that to other things, like my example of coding and software engineering. So it's that I think is a huge positive. However, you can do that with other things. You don't have to get a project car just to learn problem solving skills, right? You can just start with Legos. If you're someone that didn't have that like logical ability in school, or you noticed that you were kind of like lacking in some of these things, don't get a project car and spend $4, $5, $6, $10,000 on something that you can't, you know, put together. Start small with like some Legos or something to develop those baseline skills. Like I was putting together model cars in like kindergarten, right? Like, so it was just kind of a natural progression where we started building up model cars. We actually first started with Legos, then we had little model kit cars, we had a go-kart, and then we had an actual project car. That was our progression. So if you're going to be doing something for the first time and trying to use your hands and, you know, prove that you can work on something, start small, right? Like under $50 you can buy a Lego kit, right? Don't spend $5,000 to you know, really suffer in the garage, right? There's no reason to do that. You can work on Legos and air conditioning. So next, let's go over some tips, just finding your next project car, or some things that you should look out for, and maybe questions of what you should ask. With that out of the way, let's say you're a dude, so you're like, hell yeah, this still sounds like a great idea. I want to buy something. And you just need to answer a basic question, like, what are you using this project car for, right? What are you trying to achieve? Is it something that you want to make your own? Do you just want to go fast? Do you want to flex on Instagram? And I'm going to say, if you say yes to any of those, you need to get your head checked, and you might as well just turn this off now, because there's better ways to do it than buying a project car. You want to go fast, buy a Tesla or a motorcycle, right? You want something to call your own, just buy a normal car that works. You want something you can flex on Instagram, go work a job and buy something nice. This is not really like the whole point. You need to go in there with a plan. And this is the 3-step process to having success. You need to have a budget. You need to budget the purchase price, not just the purchase price, but taxes, registration fees, the insurance costs, if you have to pay for that, you know, if you're not with your parents or something, and then just estimate, you know, come up with an estimate for repair costs. You can hit all the basics to get an estimate and just an idea of what the parts cost is, right? So oil changes, tires, brakes, suspension, see what, those are all consumables. And so see what those prices are for replacements. And some of them will surprise you. Oil changes on this, right? Pretty cheap. Brakes, pretty cheap. Not a whole lot really to them. However, if you're like Brother David on the 650i that he showcased here, he actually did the rear brakes on that, and it was over $400. And then he looked at tires, because those tires only last like 15,000 miles or something, because they're like the ultra high performance summer tires, and they only last 15,000 miles. They're like $400 a piece because they're also run flats. Insane. I think I got these tires for $50 a piece. Yeah, it's not even a question. You need to look at those kinds of consumables and come up with an idea of what the running costs would be, and factor that into your budget. With the costs in mind, you want to also think about, like, if you buy the car for X amount and you put Y amount into it, what is the Z amount that you can get out of it if you ever have to sell it, right? As long as you keep, this formula in your head, you'll be able to figure out how much money you can really afford to put into the car, how much the car is going to be worth. Is the car actually going to depreciate, right? Is it a vintage Japanese car like this that is appreciating, right? Or is it still like a 2014 BMW 650i that is currently depreciating, right? Dumping money into something like that when you don't have, and you're still working part-time at Wendy's or something, that's not a good plan. You may want to think ahead on that. Where are the cars in the depreciation curve? That's also another idea, another thing to think about, and where you are on that calculus, right? The next thing is just do your research. There is so much information online. Every single question you've probably had has already been asked. There are tons of videos online on how to buy used cars, what to look for specifically, what the process you should be doing. And I think the one thing, if you're a younger guy, is treat this like an exam. Now, if you hated tests, you hate school, whatever, right? But if you treat this like an exam, you have the entire internet to use as your study guide. You're in control of this, right? So you can make this open note, come up with a checklist, see what you need to have. You check the boxes off as you're checking out the car, ask questions, right? You can ask the professor questions, all that stuff. And then guess what? You can get up and walk away if at any moment. You don't have to buy the car right there, So if you fail this exam, it's only on you. You didn't do your due diligence on this, and you need to do your research. And that's the number one thing. And there's plenty of guys out there that are vehicle specific and model specific. And probably number 3 is buy the best car that you can afford. On the channel, I keep saying this rule to everyone that asks, is just buy the best thing that you can afford. It's gonna stop you from having headaches. It's gonna stop you from making stupid, ridiculous expenses, deferred maintenance. Perfect example is actually the Land Cruiser behind the camera, right? That Land Cruiser was only $1,300 and it didn't run. And it was a little bit rusty, but it was so cheap. And so we couldn't pass it up. Now we're in it for what like a clean one would have been, right? And we would have just had so much less headache if we just went ahead and bought a super clean one. And then, we would have had a lot less issues and a lot less surprise expenses down the line. So, that's something to keep in mind of, right? You pay ahead of time for that peace of mind and for the maintenance that's already been done. I followed that rule buying my wife's GX460, bought the nicest one I could find, and so far, very, very nice. The only time that rule should ever be broken is if the price is just so cheap that you have so much runway that even if something drastic happened, you're not going to lose out, right? Like this 280 was $400. Like who wouldn't buy a $400 280Z? Even though it didn't run, we knew that because it was turned over, there's a chance it will, right? And even if it doesn't, then you could sell the engine for what the cost was and then, throw something else in there. That's the only exception to the rule, is if the car is super, super cheap. But overall, you need to shift the idea that a project car is just a car and you just use it for driving and that's it, right? You just work on it, you dump money into it, you dump time into it, and then you get a running car. That's not the point. It's also about learning as much as you can and leveraging that knowledge and experience in every other part of your life, whether it's another job or getting a job by showcasing that, this is what you have, right? If you want to be a mechanic, this is your resume. It's a great opportunity to get to know people and an excuse to go outside, right? Everyone says online, touch grass. This is a great way to do it. Go out, talk to people, meet people, and make some friends. That might be a little bit of a hard sell, but talk to people. They're nice. Plus, the first time that someone rolls down their window and says, "Hey man, cool car," right? That's a dopamine hit that'll last the rest of the month. You'll be hooked. This is just, short video on some of the tips for success on having a project car. And I really think that there's not enough content out there talking about the indirect effects of project car ownership and, the main benefits that you get. You see on builds of just building a Lamborghini, it's like, cool, he has a Lambo, right? But you had to have somehow known and have that knowledge and understanding and be able to take the risk and have the confidence in yourself to do something like that. That I think can go a long way further in career, job, business, whatever. But yeah, if you feel like I've missed anything or you want to add something to conversation, go ahead, drop a comment down below. And yeah, thanks for watching.